I want to start out with a question. How many of you got up this morning, walked into the kitchen, got a cup of coffee, went back upstairs, went in the bathroom, looked in the mirror, and said, how can I go to work today and screw up? Put your hands up. No, nobody's doing that. So we're going to talk about, you really all want to be winners, right? So we're going to talk about that in just a few minutes. But what I really want to do is I want you to, Tony and I really want you guys to think differently when you walk away from here. Because innovation is so important. I define innovation in a different way. I define innovation, the best definition I've ever heard of innovation is trying to do something better, no matter what happens, day in and day out. And when you walk away from here tonight, you'll be thinking a little differently and you'll be able to do some things better. So I want to start off with an exercise. And what I want you to do is I want you to find someone next to you and I want you to talk about what's important to you outside of work. Okay? I'm going to ask you to talk about it, then I'm going to say switch off, talk to somebody else. I'm going to do a couple of rounds of this. If you're not working, if you're retired, what's important to you, whether it's family, exercise, or whatever. So I want to go through a few rounds, and there's method to my madness here. Everybody got it? So go at it. Find somebody, talk about what's important to you outside of work. Go ahead. Jump in.
Jen,
Nice to meet you. We're talking about what's important to you outside of work. Just jump in with somebody. What's that? Probably about 4 or 5 minutes total. Yeah. Thank you. You could. Can she jump in with you too?
Of course.
Okay, wherever you are is okay. Wherever you are is okay. Switch off. If you haven't talked, let the other person talk. Let the other person talk. Get up and move around. Go find somebody else. Push somebody else out. Talk to somebody. Get up and move around. What's important to you? What's important to you? What's that?
I get talking to them.
Donna. You meet my wife, Becky. You know Becky. My wife, Becky.
I think we've met before. I do. Yeah.
This is my mother-in-law, Barb.
Yeah. Good bottle that up. Okay. One more round. Go to somebody you haven't met with. Just move around. Move around. One more time. Don't be shy. Move around. Go back to that group. Some worry. How am I feeling?
fine women. Okay, wherever you are is fine. Wherever you are is fine. Right back up here. Right back up here. Yeah, you're coming back to me, please. I did this with an audience of about 300 or 400 managers about 3 or 4 years ago, and the room was just exploding. So let me ask you a question. I'm not really concerned right now what you talked about. What are you feeling right now? What's your frame of mind like right now? Give me some words that would describe that. How you feeling? What's your
Excited.
excited? What else?
Open.
Open? What else?
Awake.
Awake. Oh, you're asleep. What else?
More aware.
More aware.
Happy.
Happy. Connected. Appreciative. And what if you could bottle this up right now, how you're thinking and how you're feeling? What if you could bottle it up and spread it around? And when you get stuck on an idea, you're at work, things aren't going as well as you hoped they would, you can at least take the stuff right out of the bottle. This was proven in the MIT Learning Labs that once your mind is in a great place, creativity blossoms, you can think differently, all sorts of cool stuff happens. When we work with teams that are really in a tough spot, we'll start this exercise right at the beginning. And what we'll do is say, when you get stuck, go out and take a break. Come back in, I want your mind just like it is right now, because all sorts of things can happen that are pretty cool. Okay, so I want to tell you a little bit about myself, and I'm going to pass these out while I'm doing it. Tony and I decided, he was telling me, he said, aren't you going to put up some of the companies you work for? I was going, well, or worked with. This is who we work with. These are some of the for-profit companies. I'll be sharing some stories from a few of them tonight. These are some of the non-profit companies that we've worked with. My most favorite is the one in the middle here called Arts Escape. That's my wife's nonprofit in Southbury, Working Art Gallery. Put a plug for Becky. And I'm known as Becky's husband around Southbury. So.
Where's Becky?
Becky.
Hi, Becky.
Okay. One thing I want to talk about, how many people, I know some of you, how many people in here have ever run a marathon? Put your hand up. You have? John? Russ? Teresa? It's on your bucket list? Okay. My goal in life was never to run one. Okay? Yours did. Okay. Ben, come on in. My goal in life was never to run one. You get to sit right there.
Where's in the front?
Yeah. This is like Mass at Sacred Heart. They come in a little later and they'll leave a little earlier. Okay. So my goal in life was never to run one. But I happened to be part of this running club that puts a little pressure on you. Not the one on Thursday nights, because we drink beer after we run, so we don't pressure each other. But the one in Roxbury, Connecticut's been running races for 30, 35 years, and we show up on Saturdays. Yay, there's some people. And we run, and then we eat breakfast. And so we were sitting there, it was April of 2008. We were sitting there, and we decided that, you're not going to run a marathon. I said, I'm not going to run a marathon. I can meet that goal in life. I'm not going to run a marathon. So finally they wore me down. I said, okay, I'll run one. And what I was going to do was run the Marine Corps Marathon in Washington, D.C. So what happens to runners around 23, 24, mile 23 or 24? You start to hit this thing called a wall sometimes, and you start to not feel great, okay? So about mile 23 or mile 24, we're running, and there's these two women. They have these shirts on that says first-time marathoners. And they're running, and as we're running, the Marine Corps Marathon has 30,000 people running. So even as far back as I was, they were still running. People were still running. So there, these two women run, and they had these shirts on that said first-time marathoners. And so as we're running, this lady said, "My friend's not going to make it. She's in too much pain." And so we were running, and we started talking, and a bunch of people, somebody's got to help us. And we're about 3 miles from the finish. So I started talking to the lady who was hurting, and we started talking. I found out she was from Western Pennsylvania. I found out that she was her first marathon. She was about my age. We had kids. And after probably about a half a mile, she started feeling a little bit better. She goes, "Thank you so much. You've helped me here." And I said, "I tell you what, why don't we just finish together? We'll finish in. It's 2 miles left." She goes, "That sounds great." About another quarter of a mile, I got the worst hamstring cramp in my back of my leg. And she took off. I never saw her again. It's a true story. Took off. But remember I asked you, what does it feel like when you come to work, you really want to win, you're not trying to screw up? I had 3 goals for that marathon. First one was to finish, because I had a reputation. Second was to have fun, because if you don't have fun, you won't, if you don't finish, you don't have fun. And third one was to come in somewhere around 4 hours and 30 minutes. I finished. Fun is a relative term. Well, more fun the day after, or 3 days after. And I finished about 4 hours and 45 minutes. You think, did I win on my terms? Yeah. So what I really want to tell you is winning has to be on your terms. You define what winning looks like on your terms. Remember we talked about innovation when you think a little bit differently? It's trying to get better each time, and only you can set those standards for winning. You got a little handout right here. What I'd like you to do is follow along on a few things here. But right at the top, there's something I'd like you to fill out. It says, right at the top, it says, what are we trying to solve for? I want you to think about a challenge, whether it's at work, whether you're a school teacher, you run a business, you're a realtor, you're retired. Think about something. It's a challenge at work, and I'd like you to write that down on the top of that page. Okay? Anybody need a pen? Write it down. Oh, you need a handout. Has anybody got any extra copies of those handouts? No? Yeah, I got it. Okay. Oh, plenty of them over here. Any extra pens? You need a pen? No, I need one of a pen? Oh, okay, we'll get a couple of pens for you. Write it down. Challenge you have. It's work. By the way, the methodology I talk about, we feature in a book called Think to Win. It's a lot of business case studies. But in the book itself, we follow a young lady called Emma, and she's in a career search. So all the tools we're talking about, you can use for anything. The epilogue lists 20 different things you can use this methodology for. Life plan, bonus years for your retirement. Spoke to a group of realtors. How do they plan out their year? Okay, everybody got something down? All right, let's put it in context, because a lot of times when we think about challenges, we think about what's going on and kind of, about the back and the past. I got a slide up there. It says 2012. What's some of the changes we've seen in the world, in our community? Think about social, technology in the last 3 years. Just think about them. Give me some of them. Something that's really jumped out.
Social media.
Fake news. An election, a political situation like we've never had before. What else?
Social media.
Say a little bit more about social media.
Just that so many people are completely dependent upon it, either for their fake news or for their social interactions, their friendships.
50% of the news people get nowadays comes from Facebook. 50%. Okay, what else? What other changes have we seen? How about your own life, whether it's your profession? Where were you 3 years ago? What are some of the things? What about in the education system? We got some school teachers here. Any big changes?
More competitive.
More competitive in what way?
Technology.
in
Tech-
your classes
Okay.
with students because you are teaching a different generation.
A different generation? Okay. What else?
Well, the environment, the climate has been major changes, whether it's, whatever it's attributed to, but nonetheless, I don't think anybody can deny that.
Okay,
it's
yeah.
some incredible natural disaster.
How about in your work situation? What are some of the changes you've experienced at work? Whether it's, yeah,
We have a whole new curriculum change with the sciences, called
Oh.
Next Generation Science Standards. So we have to implement a whole new curriculum.
okay, a whole new way to implement a curriculum. That wasn't around in 2012.
No.
Okay, what else? Anybody within their situation? Yeah,
I've started a business since 2012.
you started business in 2012.
Well, 2013.
Good for you. Congratulations. How's it going?
Good.
All right, good. So what are some of the challenges you've seen in the last 3 years since you started your business?
Moving from my home to having a studio.
Okay.
Obviously that means increasing my income on a monthly basis
Okay.
to cover those expenses.
Sure, so you got different changes that have taken place.
Competition in the market.
What about competition in the market? Who's a photographer? Oh, go ahead, I'm sorry.
It's going to be the online factor when it comes to retail.
Okay, Amazon. Yeah. When I did this session years ago, I asked, this 1995, I did a session. I said, what's the largest bookstore in the world? And they said, Barnes & Noble, Borders. And people hadn't even heard of Amazon. Yeah.
Oh, well, with what I do, it's sort of an arms race with technology, bigger sensors, bigger files. Double-edged sword, though, because I can get all that stuff overnight from New York.
And what do you do again?
I'm a photographer.
Mm-hmm.
And going back, a ways to the days of film, it's completely different.
Yeah.
It's not even photography anymore.
Becky we had a dark room in our house, didn't we? Yeah. Okay. What's it going to be like 5 years from now?
No idea.
Dramatically different.
It's going to be dramatically different. So the question is, how do those things impact you? And the question that you wrote down has to be put in the context on what's going on in the world. Okay? So if you start saying, here's my challenge, you have to look outside in. And I'll give you some tips on doing that. When we talk about it, and we're going to come back to that because I'm going to get you to work with it in a few minutes. We talk about some things that are important. I sold pharmaceuticals. Anybody know what a PDR is? What is it?
Physician's test.
What's it used for?
Medication.
I'm sorry?
Is it a medication?
Yeah, doctors looked at it for medication. So in 1984, I sold pharmaceuticals. My father-in-law used to say I sold drugs, but I sold pharmaceuticals. And this is what the doctors used and the pharmacists used when they were looking up medicine. Okay, what do I, prescriptions, what are the interactions? So they had this hard copy. It looks like a dictionary. Take probably 10, 15 years in time. It was at least on a disc, so they could update it. Now it's mobile, get it real time. So think about the medications and everything else people are on, and you have a new drug come out, you had to wait till it was published the following year. So they had to look at many different places. This is kind of world that's changed so quickly. I was 30 years old before I ever sat on a computer and used a mouse. My daughter was 3.5, 4. Okay? So the thing I'm going to talk about is the principles and practices that you use when you think strategically, all right? But first one is challenge assumptions. Okay? We all have assumptions that we think, that we believe that might be true, that may or may not be true. Last year, I was with a fraternity at Boston University and had a bunch of students. And I said, okay, what assumptions do employers make about you? What do you think some of the things they were saying? They were juniors and seniors. What do you think they were saying? No experience. What else?
We like to party.
Like to party. Millennials are lazy. Lazy millennials. And so I said, okay, how do you know that? I'm an English major. I cannot get a job in business. How do you know that? So the question is, you have to challenge existing assumptions, because if you don't, you'll never get anywhere. How can you innovate and create if you're not challenging the status quo? Silicon Valley, true story about, I guess it's probably about 10 or 15 years ago. And I use this when we have people who get stuck. engineers sitting around. They were stuck on a project. They couldn't get through it. So they were all sitting around, and they were working late one night, and they decided to order pizza. And so what they said is they're going to hire the pizza man, happened to be a guy, and the pizza man's role was to sit in the room and ask any questions he did not understand. Okay, you think about it. You got a bunch of engineers in Silicon Valley. So they're sitting there talking, and the pizza man raised his hand. Here was the rule. The pizza man had to ask questions that he didn't understand to the person who was talking. The person who was talking had to explain it to terms that the pizza man could understand. Okay, so we're sitting around talking. You come up. You guys are engineers. Your name again?
Jenna.
Jenna, Ben, you're talking. I don't understand. Ben, explain that to me. So Ben explains it to me. And Jenna goes, Ben, is that what you meant all along? Because he was using language that you just kind of didn't understand. So what we'll say, if you're stuck and you need to think, put a pizza man around. Ask pizza man questions all the time. How do you think? How do you think differently? Okay? Who's ever been in a meeting? Does everybody know what the iPhone prayer is? Know what the iPhone prayer is? Okay, so the first one was challenge and assumption, so that's the first one. Anybody know what the iPhone prayer is? Huh? Okay. Oh, you got a iPhone, right? Have you ever been in a meeting? Who works in a company here, a larger company? Russ. Okay. You ever been in a meeting, whether it's a company or an event, teacher's meeting, and you see somebody doing this in the middle of the meeting? Sitting down, bending over, doing this little prayer to their phone. They're not paying attention. Okay? It's called an iPhone prayer. We see it all the time. When we were working with a group of executives not too long ago, they were sitting around a room, and the person in marketing was talking. The manufacturing guy started doing this, doing a little iPhone prayer. Just checking out. Okay? Another thing is, what's the scope or scale that you need to think about? Are you talking about the marketing guy? Is the marketing guy talking about the sales guy? Is it their boss? Is it the boss? So what happens is when we're working in organizations, we're going to challenge assumptions, ask pizza man questions. Where is the conversation taking place? At this level, this level, this level. Also, if you're doing your little thing there, and if you're working in somewhere, we'll say, what's the scope? What's the scale? Where's the market? What's the geography? We're in conversations and people will say all sorts of weird things. So I got a question for you. I got a one question quiz. And you got to write the answer down to this quiz. I know copying off each other's paper. What does it mean when you're number one in your marketplace? So what does it mean when you're number one in your marketplace? Write the answer down to that question. What does it mean when you're number one in your marketplace? What does it mean? What did you have?
Can we answer it?
Sure. Give me the answer.
In my opinion, if you're number one in your marketplace, or you said marketplace?
Sure.
Is that I would think that you don't know enough people.
Okay. You know enough people?
You don't know enough people in a sense that there's always going to be someone that does something different.
Trying to catch up with you.
In the sense that they might do it better than you.
Okay.
And I've met a lot of people who think that they're the best at something, but those people I thought that they just did it. They didn't know. You know, some people that I know that did it better in a different way. Maybe they might be good in one sense, but also they could be. Sometimes when people start to say that you know the best, you know, it's kind of you're kind of capping yourself.
So you were like best and better. Okay.
Yeah.
Hold those thoughts.
In a sense, yeah.
How about you?
You have to work harder than when you were number two.
Had to work harder than when you were number two.
You have to work harder than
Good. What else we have?
Isn't the question you're asking, ask the question again. 'Cause
What
I'm
does it
curious.
mean when you're number one in your
What
marketplace?
does it mean?
When you're number one in your marketplace.
Okay, so I thought, I'm seeking a definition answer, so I was saying.
Go ahead.
You were the one that comes to mind.
Okay. One that comes to mind, most
Period.
memorable. Okay.
Like, so if somebody says, oh, you know, I need a tissue, you go, you need a Kleenex.
Okay.
Like whatever is the brand or the product or the business service
Okay.
that comes to mind first.
One or two more. Yes.
You're connecting with your audience.
You're connecting with your audience. What else?
I have the most market share.
Most market share. What's the right answer? Oh, you have one.
You need to watch your back.
You sure need to watch your back. What's the right answer? Huh? Okay, what assumption, did you challenge my assumption? And when I was talking about scope or scale, what did I mean by number one?
Could be it.
What did I mean by marketplace? What scale was scope, or was it Connecticut? Was it?
Everyone went to their own in their head, I guess.
Oh yeah, started going to your own in your head. When I worked with Gillette, Paul and I worked both there at Duracell, we had a 75% global market share on blades and razors. Pretty good? What if we were 85 the year before? Still pretty good? Relative. So when you're thinking about these things, what you need to do is, for assumptions, ask clarifying questions. One of the reasons that people don't challenge people in organizations, they get scared and nervous, they don't want to speak up. One of the things we say, ask clarifying questions. They're non-threatening. What did you mean by this? What do you mean by marketplace? Always think about the scope on what you're trying to do. Scale. And facts tell a great story. Number one, you need data. What I mean by best. What does most mean? What does better mean? Get clarity on language. All that helps when you're trying to work with people, trying to think about what you're supposed to do. Okay, question. How many of you want more emails? Put your hands up. Put them up. How many want more emails? Okay.
Depends on the email.
Depends on what it is. What if you won the lottery? What if you won the lottery and someone was trying to, what if you won the lottery and someone was trying to get a hold of it? Would that be a good email? Okay. The average person at the low end, whether it's LinkedIn, email, social media, spends 7 hours a day on technology. 7 hours a week at the low end. And a lot of that is email. So they say for each email, it takes 1 to 2 minutes to process it, and maybe 4 or 5 to answer it if you hang out too long on it. What we say is, anybody heard of the old 80-20 rule? What does that mean? What's the 80-20 rule?
80% of the work is done by 20% of the people.
80% of the work is done by 20% of the people? Well, 80% of your time with 20% of your people? Yes, sort of.
Or do something 80% of the time because 20% you might fall off the wagon.
Might fall off the wagon.
Like a diet.
From a marketing standpoint,
Uh-huh.
it's like on Facebook, if you're advertising 80% of the time, you are engaging with people but not directly advertising, and it's 20% of the time you're talking about your business.
Okay. It's called the Pareto principle. It was an Italian somebody somewhere a long time ago. And what he realized is, and his research started to show, is 20% of your efforts can produce 80% of the results. So for example, if you have, if you are in a consumer products company, you want to spend time with customers like Walmart. You want to spend time with customers like Amazon. So 20% of those customers can give you roughly 80% of the volume. So 20% of your effort, if you spend 20% of your time on things, they'll produce 80% of your efforts. We see a 90-10 rule now. So it used to be 80-20, it's 10-90. So focusing on the most important things, if you can focus your efforts on those 10% of things that are most important, that will generate about 90% of the results that you need. Okay? So that's what we say. If you want more emails, how many people have a to-do list that's 30 or 40 pages long? And what we try to do is we call them key issues in the book. We work with organizations. We'll go in, they'll have 30 or 40 things they need to work on. I'm going, holy moly, how are you going to get that done? So we work with them to kind of squeeze it down so we can get to those vital few. And then you can talk about those 5 or 6 things you need to focus on all the time. And the last one, who's you've got a realtors in here? What's the 3 laws of real estate? Everybody knows that question. Location. Okay. 3 laws of strategic thinking are linkage. How do you connect the dots up there? So what we'll say is, if you're thinking about all this stuff up there, And you need to make solutions to that problem you have. If you don't do your homework and you jump right to the solutions, you're not linking back to what the problem is. And I'll give you an example in just a minute. These are the 5 principles, okay? Don't look at your paper. Somebody give me one of those principles again. Give me one.
Scope scale.
What about it? What's it mean?
That you should ask questions to clarify, what the scope of the problem or the thing you're trying to solve, and you can get a sense of the data.
Boy, you got a gold star. What else? Okay. What's another principle? Okay. What's that mean?
The language, look at the language. What does that really mean?
Yeah. And play the role of the pizza man, right? Okay. Well, give me another one. What is that? We just talked about.
The 1090.
Yeah, the 1090. Yeah. How can we get those things that we think about to innovate down to those vital few things that are important? Okay, and we have 2 more. Data. What about it?
Make decisions based on.
Make decisions based on data. Data informs intuition, which informs. Data informs opinions, not opinions all the way around. There's no alternative facts in this thing here. There's real facts. And the last one was the laws of real estate. What were the linkage? What about linkage? Got to connect the dots, right? Okay, go back to what you're trying to solve for. Did you scope it out in the right way? Is it clear enough that if you showed it to somebody else, they'd understand what it is? If you handed that to somebody, would they be able to read it and find out what your challenge is? So what we do when we work with teams that are trying to innovate, we say, what's your challenge? And we put it up on a wall, and we work it and work it and work it until everybody can understand it. It's the right scope. There's challenge assumptions against it, all that other stuff. It's so important. Because the number one reason we find people can't solve problems is they don't know what the problem is. Okay, so we always ask, what's keeping you awake at night? And what are you really trying to solve for? When people go into meetings at organizations, the first thing we say is, start out with what you're trying to solve for, because you're all over the place. It's a great starting point. Just think if you could do that every time you went in a meeting. Why are we here? What are we trying to solve for? Okay? And it's also the thing, what's keeping you awake at night? And we call it the umbrella issue. It's the umbrella issue that's going to help solve everything. So if you're going to innovate and you're going to think strategically, what are you really trying to solve for? Some of the people who are really good innovators aren't great problem solvers. All right? And so what we also say, your problem that you wrote down shouldn't have solutions. It should include things externally. Remember, we went back to 2012. What are all the things? Because usually your problem is something that's coming from the outside that's influencing what's going on the inside. You got these academic standards. Somebody's writing them somewhere. You're not creating them in your classroom and spreading them out all over the internet. So there's an influence from the outside that's going to always impact something on the inside. If you're a business owner, how many entrepreneurs we have in here, small business owners? Okay. Do you get up every day and say, I'm not worried about anything that's going on outside the walls? No, it's all driven from the outside. So it has to have a bigger picture in mind. Solve a little problem. It's not just a do-it thing. Something a little bit bigger. What am I going to do with my business 2 or 3 years down the road? What's keeping me awake at night? You write it down, and it should be in 2 sentences, and it should have a little tension in it. Okay? Something that kind of keeps you up at night. So innovation. What's keeping me awake at night? So you wrote your problem down. I also want you to go to step number 3. Bless you. Go to step number 3 if you don't mind. Now, if you're a realtor, or if you're a teacher, if you own an art gallery, if you're a photographer, if you have a company that's doing online career work, if you are head of economic development for the town of New Milford, what's your unique value that you bring as a teacher of that classroom, as somebody that runs the business? What's your unique value? So write that down right there on question number 3. What differentiates you? All right? If If you have your own photography business, what differentiates you from anybody else out there, any other competitor? Because that's where you really want to get with that challenge. You know what I like about the problem statement? I think Albert Einstein said it best. What he said is, my solution will happen if I can have an hour, if I can spend 55 minutes defining what that problem is and 5 minutes to solve it. That'd be great. The way you solve it is one of the ways is what's unique and what you do best. You apply that. But I love this quote, and we use it with people in our work all the time. 50 an hour. This guy says he's got to be right, right? On your page there, you have on the back page you have an hourglass. Flip over there for just a second. You have what we call the 5 principles that you've talked about, and a series of questions in order. There's a logical order of these questions that if you follow them in this order, you'll be able to think differently. You'll be able to get to solve your problem. And so the first one is, what do we know? What's the facts? What facts do we know? What are our opinions? Facts can be data. We're doing a strategic plan for the town of Southbury, and we're on the top part of that hourglass right now. We're spending most of our time, what do we know? Of what we know, what's most important? Of what's important, what's our value that our town has? What's unique about Southbury? And then what insights are we having and what are we going to do with that? So we're spending the time, 5 or 6 months on this part right here. By the way, you can spend 5 minutes on there and go through these questions real quick. So what we do is we take that problem and we dump it through that hourglass. What are we trying to solve for? We dump it through the top of that hourglass, and you say, I got my problem here or my challenge. What do I know? What's the data? What's the information? What's the scope? And so we go through all that. Then we take it and we say, of everything I know, what's most important? In companies, we use something that we write about in the book. So if any of you are in a company, you can do this, by the way, if you have your own business. I'm a single entrepreneur. I worked at Procter, I worked at Duracell, Gillette, Procter & Gamble, and I started my own business 10 years ago. I use this methodology on my business, and I use this tool right here. What I say is, what's going on in my company? So what I say is, okay, I've got 1 employee, 2 employees, how much money I have in the bank, okay, what's my brand, what's my products, what's my service. Colleagues is people, culture, stuff like that. All right, you can have a culture of 1. Okay, these are all internal things. That answers those questions, what's going on. So I do a data analysis. Then I go to the outside. The category, I happen to be in the management development category. I'm not going to go over there and teach presentation skills. I'm not going to try to do online the stuff you're doing. I'm not in finance, the company go out of business. All right, so the category that you work in. You're in the photography, you're in the arts, that's the business. You're in the arts, you're not over there with a nonprofit trying to compete with the gyms. So what category do you work in? And what's going on in that category? Who's my competitors? Who else is doing this stuff? What are they doing? What did they do 3 years ago? What are they be doing 3 or 4 years from now? Then I look at customers. Customers, consumers, whatever, end users, whatever you have them. And then we have a couple of others. We talk about community. Community is stuff we talked about, social trends, technology, economic, environmental, all that stuff. And we go through those with organizations, but I do this for myself. And then what we do is we take these things up here and we say, let's put it down and answer that question. This is what we know. This is what I know about my company. Down below is what's most important. Everybody heard of this term called a SWOT analysis? I know some of you have. Okay, you can do your own personal SWOT analysis. When we did this with Emma in the book, she looked at all the things that she was good at we didn't use these C's. We basically said she's got an education, she's got a grade point average, here's her experience, I speak a different language, I want to live in this area, and that's all internal to Emma. And then we looked external at Emma and we said, what's the job market like? What's the culture? Who's hiring what? So she looks at those two things and says, these are all the things that are important to me. So my strengths, and my weaknesses, my opportunities and threats, these are all internal, external. And so what we say is, all right, if I have strengths that differentiate me from my competitor, I'll probably be pretty good. But they have to be facts. We'll go into companies and they'll have this thing called a SWOT analysis. And we say, how did you tell what is a strength or weakness or opportunities and threat? Give me some evidence. I would encourage you to put your own personal SWOT together. Put your own SWOT together for your business. Put it together for yourself. Put one together for your career. It's a great career tool. If you were going to do something volunteer, put a SWOT together. What's my strength? What's my weakness? And then ask yourself, what's my super strength? They're the questions you ask. And you say, what's my super strength? And that's where you get to that question that I asked you in number 3, what differentiates you? Okay, see how you're starting to link things? Got all these things, got all these things. So, somebody want to share what differentiates them? Anybody want to share anything they wrote down? Go ahead.
For those of you that don't know me, I'm a human resource professional, and one of the things that differentiates me is my ability to connect with employees at all levels of the organization and really build strong and working relationships with them.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'm able to leverage those relationships to hit key business priorities.
Okay. So that differentiates you?
Yeah.
So the other people make bad relationships. They can't connect with people, and they talk to people at only one level of the organization.
Right.
Okay. What really differentiates you?
I just told you.
What's your experience?
Extensive.
Okay. Tell me a little bit about that.
I've worked for an organization for 30 years.
Okay. So you have 30 years of experience. Okay. What else?
In operations, sales, customer service.
Oh, so you have experience in different levels. A lot of people don't have that. They still can connect, but they don't have that. What else you have?
I know you. No.
That's a competitive disadvantage. See?
That's an opportunity. No. Well, definitely my experience definitely differentiates.
Okay. There's some people that have 30-year experience that can connect. What is it about your experience?
Just it's diverse.
What does that mean?
I've experienced in a lot of areas.
I'm playing with them, really. What I'm saying here, and I know him, so we can... You got to really dig deeper and say what really differentiates you. We were doing this with a group of 300 people, and I asked the question, we say, we have smarter people. We're smart people. I said, oh, the competition's hiring really stupid people. Isn't that nice? We did it with a group of realtors, and she says, I really have great customer service. I said, okay, so if I go over to Caldwell Bankers, their customer service stinks with all their realtors. So really, what is it about you that's unique, that really stands out, that can differentiate you from anybody out there, because we're all unique?
So it's really factual information. Like we give the description often,
Mm-hmm.
but you're really looking like what's backing it.
I'm trying to clarify the assumptions or get clarity, but facts will help you differentiate yourself. Like 30 years. I have 30 years, but I had 15 in sales. I had 10. But it also can be, it doesn't always have to be factual. What can you have that's not factual that really differentiates you?
Charisma.
Okay, you can have charisma. You have a personality. What's that?
Vision.
Vision. There's different, what's that?
Passion.
You have a passion. There's people that don't have a love or something as deep as you have about something. There's people about passion and about ideas Tony's going to talk about. Okay? So what you do is you start moving down that umbrella there and you say, okay, here's everything I've learned. Here's all the data. I've had all this stuff. I got my SWOT. I know when I'm unique. Then you basically say, okay, what did I learn from this? What are the 4 to 6 vital few things, those 10%, that can really help me focus on what's most important? Remember that little pie graph? So you look at all this stuff and you start to see themes or patterns that come out of here. And all of a sudden, 5 or 6 things start to emerge. And then you say, okay, if that's what we call them key issues, is that's what I'm learning, and that's step number 4 on there. If they're the insights I'm taking, what are the implications? So what? So what? So when I asked that question up there on the beginning, I had that 2012, I said, what are some of the changes? What does that mean for you? So in Kevin's situation, he's got a great background, he's got some good experience, I know, he's got a great resume. He's unique because he's got sales, HR experience, manufacturing, quality, organization. Nobody has that uniquely like you have. And so he's done his own SWOT, and he's got his, so what really differentiates him, he really knows it. But then what are the insights? What is the 4 or 5 things he needs to focus on for his career search? And so what? And I'm going to talk about the bottom part of this, then I'm going to shut up. Turn it over to Tony in a few minutes. The bottom part of that hourglass goes into things such as, what's my purpose? So you go back to that, what's my challenge? What's keeping me awake at night? And question number 5 is, how do I position myself, my idea, my career, my business, based on all those things I'm trying to solve for? I got this challenge up there, I've written it down, I've done all my stuff. So how do I position? How do I position my art? How do I position myself against competitors? How do I position myself in the market? What's my position in the real estate industry? What's my purpose as a teacher? So that's what you really do. And you go back to that challenge, that 2-sentence challenge you have, and say, this is a little bit different. And then you say, okay, if that's my purpose, it's kind of like, where are you going to play? That's what we talk about. What space are you going to play in? I'm going to play in the consulting world. I'm going to play in the arts world. I'm going to play in the photography. I'm going to play in economic development. And then you basically say, okay, what are my goals? Go back to those goals that you have. All right, make sure that they're fact-based. And then we say, what's your choices? Now, if they're all my choices, strategies and strategic things about choices, a lot of times what you choose not to do is just as important as what you choose to do. So if you're working down that, you'll say, what's my purpose, step number 4? What should I achieve are my goals? What choices do I make are my strategies? And then how do I communicate this whole thing? So 1 through 8 are the questions on that hourglass. So that's the kind of stuff we have in the book. But I'm going to finish with a story in just a few minutes. I want to show you a few slides. Guitar music's on its way out. Who the hell wants to hear actors talk? Not feasible to have a... Okay, so I'm going to tell you a story and I'm going to walk you through those 8 steps with an hourglass. Okay, this is a true story. 1999, I was working for Gillette. I was in downtown Boston. And so I worked for Duracell, and then they moved me up to Boston, had a junior in high school, so I had an apartment up there. I commuted back and forth. And I'd go up a few days a week. I kept an office at Duracell in Bethel. But I was part of the leadership development team, training team, and we had a huge workshop in downtown Boston. So I had an apartment that was right next to Prudential Tower. If you've ever been in there, it's right on Boylston Street. So I had an apartment there. And this was a really big deal because we were training and the session started, first time we launched this global program, it started at 7:30 the next morning. Okay, so I had to be preparing for it. The CEO was going to kick it off. We had all these executives there. So I'm driving up, it's a late Sunday night, and I get right outside Boston and my cell phone rings. It's my 12-year-old daughter. She goes, "Dad, you left your suitcase at the door." And this is about 10:30 on a Sunday night. And I said, don't worry about it. You know, I got some clothes in my apartment. I keep clothes there. And so she goes, okay, Mom just told me to remind you, your suitcase is at it's at the door. I said, okay, so that's all right, I got some clothes. So I got into my apartment and I looked out and I had I had some dress shirts, I had some sport coats. And by the way, this was a very conservative outfit at the time. You had to show up in coat and tie, buttoned up, with like bankers. And so I looked in my closet and I had shirts and sport coats, but I didn't have any dress pants. And I was wearing a pair of jeans that were holey. And I'm sitting here thinking, okay, what am I going to do now? So it's 10:30, 11 o'clock at night, downtown Boston. If you've been in downtown Boston on a Sunday night, it's not like New York City. The streets are kind of dead. So I said, oh, okay, no problem. I said, I'll go down. There's got to be a shop open on Newberry Street. So I went up and there was a Gap there. So I knocked on the window of the Gap and some guy came up and I said, hey, can I buy a pair of pants? He goes, we're closed. And I said, well, I told my spirit, I work for Gillette, I need a pair of pants. And he goes, okay, let me go ask my manager. And he went back and came back to the door. He goes, it's against the law for us to do any commerce after closing. We can get in trouble. I said, oh, okay. So I walked on down. So I went through the hotels and I'd see Harvard sweatshirts. I would see ugly ties. I would see everything except pants. So I said, what am I going to do? So I came back into the hotel and I saw this guy I worked with named Dave Susky. Now, Dave was a little bit different shape than me. So Dave said, I got an extra pair of pants. I said, I don't know if they will work. So he says, okay. So I went to bed that night and I woke up and I said, what am I going to do? It's 7 in the morning. By the way, if I showed up in jeans here, it's like career suicide. It would have been a bad thing. Okay, so what was I going to do? So help me. What is my challenge? Step number, the thing. What's keeping me awake at night? What is it?
No pants.
Okay. What's the external factors coming in?
Stores are closed.
Okay, stores are closed. That's an environmental thing, yeah. It's the
Expectations to have nice pants.
expectations I'm going to show up with nice pants. Okay? So my challenge is, so somebody give me the challenge that I would write it down. What is it? What's that? I have to find some pants. Okay?
What am I going to wear for work?
What am I going to wear for work? Okay, what's the data? The first question is, what do I know? Give me some facts I just told you. What do I know? What's that? Stores are closed. Data. What else?
Can't wear jeans.
I can't wear jeans. Correct.
You must have pants.
What's that?
You must have
I must have pants. That's true.
You know someone with
You
pants.
don't know anybody who looks just like you.
I don't know anybody who looks just like me. That's true.
But
Okay.
you do have pants available.
I do have pants available. Oh,
Yeah, there is a
okay.
possibility. Magic and
All right. Well, what else do I know?
The hotel has pants.
They what? Need dress pants, right?
The hotel has.
The hotel. Do they have pants?
They
Might have a tail.
They might have them. Okay. Give me some other data. What's my goal?
To be able to go to work tonight.
Okay, make it smart. Go to work. What time do I need to be there? On time. What time did I say I needed to be there? It starts at 7:30, so I should be there around 7, right? Okay, I'm 2.5, 3 hours from home. That's another data point, right? What else? The stores are closed. Another data point. So I'm all these things. I'm going. Okay, there's 3 or 4 issues that are okay. The issues are I need to find my pants. The implications if I don't do that. So I have 3 or 4 things that I need. These 3 or 4 things. I need to find pants. Blah blah blah. So I had some goals. Strategies are about choices. What are my choices? Wear a good shirt.
Wear your friend's pants because.
Wear my
they're better
friend's
than
pants.
ours.
That would be lovely.
Your daughter doesn't drive.
My daughter doesn't drive, she's 12. And by the way, when we talk about strategies, in order to have choices, you have to have alternatives. And you have to have contingency strategies. So an alternative might be something I have, but I rejected. I forgot to tell you that. An alternative is a contingency is like plan B. Okay? So what are some choices I might have had that I rejected?
Your friend.
Going back to
I'm not going back home.
Someone can drive to you.
What's that? That's an alternative that I rejected because I wouldn't ask Becky to come meet me halfway. What's that? Call in sick. That's a choice. What other choices do I have? Wear the jeans.
FaceTime from the waist up.
Ah, FaceTime didn't exist in those days, did it? That was Okay, here's what happened. So I woke up and I said, how am I going to solve this problem? So I said, where can I find, this is a true story, where can I find pants at 6:30 in the morning? So, dry cleaners. So I walked down the street, I went in and said, I have a big meeting, I need a pair of pants, I don't have any pants. And he's got jeans. I said, no, I need dress pants. He goes, looked at me like I had two heads. So we can't help you. Went to the next one, same thing happened. Getting to be about 6:45, 7 o'clock. I'm getting really nervous. I go to the other cleaners right at the end, and I told him my problem. He goes, what size do you wear? And I said, well, at the time was probably 32. No, it was 36. And I said, okay, went back there and he handed me these pants. I said, whose are they? He goes, I don't know, just bring them back by 5. True story. So I put those pants on and I solved my problem. What I'm really trying to do is, I've gone through a lot. This is a 2-day workshop. I try to, talk about it in a few days. A lot of it we wrote about in the book. The book has some stories there. I got some copies if anybody is interested. And if I sign them, they're worth less. But thanks. I appreciate it. It's really how you think. And you can use this methodology to solve problems on any scale, anytime. I would like to share one last slide with you. I have a future innovator here before I turn it over to Tony. It's my granddaughter when the book came out. It's 2015, July of 2015. She's really interested. Then she's going, what the hell am I reading? And then she says, Dad, that's pretty bad. So anyway, thanks. We have a few nuggets to pull away with, and I appreciate your time. Thank you. Appreciate it. What's that? Yeah. Okay. Any questions? Turn over to Tony for any questions about the companies I've worked with, any of the challenges, anything I can answer? Any thoughts?
Given that you work for Gillette and
Yeah.
P&G, inevitably you probably have experience with mergers.
Yes. I've been through three of them, and I work with a lot of companies. I've experienced 3 myself.
So I'm sure that presents a whole different set of variables when
yeah.
it comes to the incoming company and,
sure.
and out with the old, in with the new,
yeah.
merge cultures.
There's a lot of research right now. The number one reasons mergers do not succeed is because of culture integration, and it's proven time and time again. There's 2 sides to the cultural piece. It's the people that are acquiring the others, and then there's the people who are being acquired. And there's a lot of really interesting research right now that talks about how to make that happen better. The best experience I probably had was the Gillette and P&G merger, because one of the things that, even though you said the cultures are just you lived through this too. I don't know if your experience was as good as mine. But they said, oh, we got the same values, same culture, everything's fine. When you get in there, they're not. I mean, there's different products, there's different competitive advantages, there's different issues, there's different strategies they're thinking about. But where I really have a lot of interest is the people who are being acquired. And because there's some research coming out of Harvard that says if you get some of these things right, it can be the best thing that can happen to you in your career. But what happens is the acquiring company usually makes a lot of the calls, and a lot of time it's done for synergies and cost savings, and you got to be, I don't know what you could probably share as much as I could what we went through. So I see it a lot, and so your question was?
Well, I guess it's like, how there's rolling with it.
Sure, yeah.
And how to, there's the sticking your ground, which
yeah.
doesn't necessarily work, and
yeah.
how do you just adaptivity, I guess.
Yeah, it's it's really interesting because you hear these things. We just got to stay focused on the business. That's the term we hear. We're being acquired. Focus on the business. We got to bring the numbers in. But people aren't focusing on the business. One of my clients was called Mead Johnson. They make the Infamil baby formula. They was just purchased by a British company called Riekert Binkaiser, and a massive company out of the UK coming in and buying this Midwestern company, probably about a tenth of the size. I happened to be working with them the day before, so we were doing an executive meeting, actually doing this methodology for their plan. I happened to be working with them. We had this on the books. It was going to take place in February. So I get a call. We will meet this is a Thursday. We're going to meet the following Tuesday in Atlanta. I get a call from the person who's head of HR, and he says, we might have a problem. I said, what? He goes, we're going to announce tomorrow that we're being acquired. And he goes, that might mess up meeting up next week. And I said, okay. And he says, but just stay, they're going to make the announcement. So the general manager and his staff, we were supposed to meet in Atlanta. They were flying in people from different parts of the country. And so what happened was the CEO and the number 2 person decided to fly over from the UK, and they wanted to meet with everybody that Monday of the following week. So they said, we can't do the meeting in Atlanta, but can we have it here in Chicago and switch it to Tuesday, Wednesday? So when we came in, the first thing that we did, and through my experience, is, okay, what are you guys going through right now? And just kind of getting it out and talking about it was critical. What are you going through? What are you struggling with? What are your struggles? Because the people that work below you are going to look up to you for the answers. But what happens is the people at the top, a lot of times, are going through the same thing that people down the bottom are. And if they're acquiring companies, people are being acquired, I think they need to be sensitive to that. There will be changes. There will people be losing their jobs. But I think there's things you can do, and it's just, I think culture is the biggest thing. I don't know. Yeah?
Just wondering if you could just talk a little bit more about scope and scale.
Sure, yeah. What's your question?
I didn't make any notes on it.
I'm sorry?
I didn't make any notes.
Oh, okay. All right. So let's say you have a business or a career. You're thinking about your business. When I think about my business, I think I can work anywhere around the world. But if you have a business that's we did some work. My wife's business she has an art studio in Southbury. So the geography or the scope on where she's going to play, is she going to try to bring people coming in from New York City, or is she going to look around the area? So when you're looking at what's keeping me awake at night, I need to think about how to scope my problem out. Is it big? Is it geographical? Is it a department problem? Is it a company problem? Is it a team problem? They're the kind of things we mean by scope. You got to scope it out. And what happens that we find, if you don't do that right, there's a lot of trouble. That problem just explodes and you can't even answer it. We were, one of the companies I was working with is Green Mountain Coffee, and they bought a company called Keurig. Okay? All right, so Green Mountain was the company in Vermont. They bought Keurig. And so they had engineers coming from Green Mountain, engineers coming from Keurig, and they asked us to come in and work with them. So they were trying to figure out where to manufacture. So what we did is we scoped it out on the problem, and so the thing was, we want to manufacture, but we want to keep it in this geography, in this place, and we need to make sure that we get the scope of our research down, so we're not researching things and looking at things that... Yeah.
Where is this problem being at least?
Right, yeah, where's it going to be, and how big is it, and
then that way
you're honing in on it.
and you're letting everything else go.
You got it. Because, so for example, they were talking about manufacturing in China. They weren't going to be researching places in South America. They were going to focus on that geography. So it's, I mean, even if you're a realtor, it still applies, because what's my geography? Where am I going to focus? What differentiates me? I'm not going to, if I'm doing real estate, I'm not going to spread my marketing out to Atlanta, Georgia and ask people, maybe somebody will come up here to look at the leaves and maybe there'll be so you really need to scope out what you're really trying to solve for. Searching for a job. What's my geography? What are my, where do I want to, what kind of, what career am I looking for? All right.
Where do you think Amazon will open the second headquarters?
I'm sorry?
Where do you think Amazon is opening the
I think it's going to be in either New Milford or Waterbury. That's a great question.
Salisbury?
No, I don't think so. I think their qualifications are they want access to a major airport. They want people that can walk. There's a great book right now. It's the story of Amazon. It just came out, and I'm listening to it on Audible. And what's really fascinating too is I just finished the book about Phil Knight called Shoe Dog. It's a great book if you want to read it. What's really amazing is how each one of these people struggled, almost went out of business, borrowed money from their family, Jeff Bezos, Phil Knight. Time and time again, they almost went out of business. But what they were able to do is what makes me, what's so unique about what I do that nobody else does. And I think they did that and they were able to basically communicate that and provide value. And by the way, what you do better is only in the eyes of people you sell to or students you teach or any of that stuff. So it's fascinating books if you want to read that stuff. All right, I think I'm almost done because Tony's going to talk first.
Thanks again, Paul.
Thank you.